Crazy. I like saying outlandish things. Oh, anyway, we are live. Hello, hello YouTube. I'm on with Ben Berry, the Area 6 Director for USPSA.
How's it
Say
going?
hi, Ben, or you could just say, just do nothing. That's fine. It's all good. You do whatever you want. I wanted to talk to you because you're on the board for USPSA and you're willing to talk. You do your own podcast, as a matter of fact, Short Course. And you've been talking about what's been going on in USPSA lately. I've been relatively quiet about the USPSA stuff lately. And, you know, what have you been hearing from the members the last couple months?
I think it's mostly just trying to understand what's going on. So there's a lot of questions around, you know, what is the status of the managing director hiring? What is the status of budgeting? Why is it taking so long to get the reviews out? Why are the agendas late, the minutes late? And honestly, it's, you know, it's they reflect largely a lot of the conversations we're having within the board of like, why is there not a better process for this? And, you know, is there a policy for this? And generally speaking, the answer is no. But we're establishing a lot of that is shockingly absent.
We had a big explosion of drama in the winter months, which was tons of good fun, and things have gone quiet now. And I think people are waiting to find out. So that's why we're talking. Like, let me put it this way, looking at the meeting minutes, to the extent that I look at them, seeing as they're not like sent to, somebody has to send them to me if I want to look at them, not being a member and all. But like, to the extent that I look at the meeting minutes, it's like, okay, there's stuff going on here, it appears, but stuff that I don't think is necessarily ever going to be public, or, you know, that kind of thing. It's like, for example, and I don't expect you to comment on this, but when I see, oh, the managing director, Donna, has left, we thank Donna for her service. Like, I'm thinking there's probably more to that story, you know, that kind of thing. Not that I expect you to say anything, but like, so I see that. So it's like, let's have a conversation. And I just want you to talk about the stuff that you can talk about or are willing to talk about to the extent that you can. And then I don't know the answers to a lot of these questions, so I'm curious what you have to say.
Let's do it.
Yeah. All right. So first, like, let's go back in time a little bit. When did you get on the board?
So my term started January 1st of 2024.
Okay.
But that was the result of an election that was running last summer. Like, so the elections are actually running right now. The elections go in June. You have to file your paperwork by May. So this has been a long road to even get to the first day, but.
Yes. Okay. So what was the situation to your, you know, like, as far as like the situation on the board, the situation with the organization, the public perception of the situation, like what were things like January 1 when you got on the board?
Oh, it was complete pandemonium. I mean, it was a couple weeks after they removed Scott Arnberg. And then at the same time, there was this push to live stream. And so in the first January board meeting, we did the live stream, and the first live stream featured 3 hours of political wrangling and Robert's Rules nonsense. And they removed Frank in that first half of the meeting.
Let's back up. They would be like it's effectively, it's a new board since then. Yeah.
Since January?
Since January 1, it is effectively a new board.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a huge amount of turnover. You know, when we look at the number of guys, so it was only a little over 2 years since the vote came down to ban you and Derek and everybody else. And you would expect in a 2-year period of the 9 seats on the board, you know, maybe 3 or 4 would turn over. But at this point, 8 of them have turned over since then, I think. There's only one person who voted to remove you that's still on the board, and it's only been 2 years.
And he won't be there for long.
Well, he's not running for re-election, but yes.
Yeah, I know that, but he won't be there for long. That's what I'm saying.
But it's, you know, when it's interesting when people talk about the board, or even more generically, when people say, you know, what does USPSA think, or what is USPSA doing? And I try and tell, man, the board is 9 different people with 9 different ideas, and they change all the time. So if you're trying if you're trying to flay us for something that was done in 2022, there's one, maybe two people on the board that are even still there. So, there's been a lot of turnover, and you don't necessarily see that visibly, in the minutes or whatnot. But if you go back and look at the names in the minutes, it's a different cast of characters. And even from January up until now, there's been a ton of turnover.
Yeah, no, I'm just interested in flaying you for what you did in 2024, Ben. That's what I'm about. So there was a bit of drama at from where I was sitting from the cheap seats. Frank was removed from the board, and Ben Barry's like the last cat left standing that halfway cares about the ordinary USPSA members and what they want out of this situation. And like I said, there's been a fairly dramatic power shift since then. And from what I'm reading, like what I can read and what I can make of the minutes, I would say like the guys like Leighton have in many ways capitulated to the shift in many ways, not completely, of course. That's just me saying that. I'm not sure you'd say that. All right, so
I mean, I think you can definitely see in some of the vote totals. I mean, things like the votes to live stream, are typically a 2-7 vote, which still passes the 3/4 majority. So yeah, I mean, there are definitely multiple camps on the board.
If you could reveal, like, what is the reasoning for not live streaming currently? I think there was some talk about protecting Donna, the previous managing director, but like that's not an issue. Like, what is there a reason for the not live streaming or voting to not live stream it?
It's primarily a concern over legal liability. If we reveal something during a live stream that is some kind of privileged information or potentially defamatory or something like that, since it is a live stream, there's no way to even edit that out of a recording, and that's one facet of it. The other facet of it is people they filter what they say. Now, I think I always try and speak in a way that if somebody were to quote me or record me, I'd be fine with it being public. Now, obviously, there is executive session for times when we genuinely need to discuss confidential matters, ongoing litigation, contract negotiation, employment issues, that kind of thing. But other than that, whether I'm aware it's being recorded like this discussion or not, I conduct myself where I just assume that whatever I say may become public. So to me, whether there's a live stream or not doesn't really change my behavior.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, okay, fair enough. I mean, the live stream's been happening to the extent that stuff's not an executive session, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that. Right. All right, so let's talk about the financial situation for the organization. The past, like you said, if we go back 2 years, it's a different cast of characters. Like, so what has happened in the past to the extent that you can talk or whatever, what's happening now? Like me reading the tea leaves, I think the org's in the green now with current operations. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think that. And then I think the future has gone from uncertain to being probably okay. But I'm curious your opinion. What's the past, present, and future situation financially?
Yeah. So, and this is actually a great time to be having this discussion because we just posted the reviewed financial statements from our independent accountants yesterday on Friday. So that's available at uspsa.org/finances. You can go and download that. But basically, if you look at the financial statements for the past few years, we had a slight profit in 2020. Off the top of my head, I think it was about $100,000. Basically, if you look at the change in net assets and subtract the investment losses and gains, so the statements are kind of confusing because they recognize either investment losses or gains as income in that year. So if we set that aside, to me, that's the best picture of our financial house. Is we had about $100,000 surplus in 2020. 21, it was smaller. 22, it started to be, or no, I'm getting that backwards. Anyway, in 2022, it was about a $350 negative. So we basically spent $350,000 more than we brought in 22. And the numbers that we just posted in 23 show that it was about $300,000. So less bleeding in 2023, but still pretty substantial. Now,
yeah,
Go ahead.
So here's a question, like where did the money go? Or like, what did that get spent on? That's like, what changes have happened? Like what, it- what's going on?
So that's something that has been difficult to track down with the existing records. I have not personally been involved in sort of going back, but to the way you teed up the question, what we are doing and what we have been doing this year, the board that's come in, is we worked with the outgoing managing director to establish a budget that we thought was realistic and conservative. So, for example, membership dues were reduced and activity fees were reduced, expecting a hit from the protests. And it looks like the protests right now are year to date about an 11% drop. And I believe we budgeted more than that in terms of a drop in activity fees and membership dues. So we put together a pretty realistic budget, and currently we are tracking ahead of that budget. So we've taken in about 5% more revenue than budgeted through the end of May, and our expenses are about 5% lower through the end of May. So if we continue on that, and that budget showed $100,000 surplus, which is in line with what we were making in 2020. Like I said, even with COVID and matches being shut down and activity being down, we still, netted 100K in 2020. So it's tough to take the records that we have of what the transactions were and reconstruct a lot of this. But looking at the actual flow of,
I was, people are going to be like, the most obvious question is, what do you mean? You can't reconstruct the records?
So I have not been involved with that side of things. I don't have access to QuickBooks
No, I mean,
or
not
anything
you
like that.
personally, but that's people's first question is like, what the hell is this guy talking about? They don't know.
Again, I don't want to speak on anything that I haven't personally seen.
Okay.
But if we were to go back and try and, I know under the previous managing director, there were efforts to go back and recode certain transactions. And, that's obviously a time consuming endeavor. As it is, the board, what we're looking at is what's the money that's in our accounts now? What are we actually spending this year? And how can we make sure that we don't spend more than we bring in this year?
All right. Do you foresee that with a different managing director that this will no longer be a problem? It will no longer be difficult to figure out where the money went or that kind of thing?
I think so. I mean, even having in the current process where we've kind of shifted expense approval. So right now, the chair of the audit committee, Area 7 Frank Rizzi, is basically is doing the financial approvals where previously that would be done by the managing director. So, even just having the board sort of more hands-on with taking on some of that oversight, there's, things like expenses have to be filed within 30 days, not just whenever you get around to it. Establishing sort of basic financial controls like that are helping us to, make sure that we're tracking things more accurately.
Well, when you say establish financial controls, it makes it sound like there was some missing.
There's definitely some that were either vague or not being enforced.
All right. Now, this type of controls, like I saw the recent minutes, something happened with the president's travel as well.
Yep.
Like that, those types of moves are getting made where you guys are just like cutting down the travel, doing more like it just it sounds like there was some pretty crazy mismanagement going on for a while is the picture being painted.
Well, I mean, I think so. Presidential travel, certainly in 2023, I don't think was. So obviously we had two different presidents in past years. So president's travel is sort of a different source of losses.
I don't mean Yemen specifically or president stuff. It just means like, it sounds like generally, there was just, I mean, the previous boards, the previous iteration of the boards, like in 2021, were they just not like they just weren't involved in this stuff? That's what it sounds like. I mean, you don't know, but What do you think?
Yeah, I mean the policy was written that basically I mean, area directors and the president could basically travel to all nationals. And then, the president and the area director each have their kind of discretionary funds and to use within traveling to matches. And then for area directors, they can, expenses related to their area match, which to me is crazy. I mean, all of my area match expenses are being paid out of the revenue from my area match. So that's not going to headquarters.
Yeah, that does sound weird.
But yeah, I get the sense that there was definitely some spending there, but I don't think the president alone was burning a $300,000 hole in the organization.
Yeah, no, well, one thing that a lot of people talk about is the board of directors doing the travel. Look, a lot of people talk about that. A lot of people don't like it. And again, from the cheap seats, that my former area director, Area 5, Rick Steele, like that was one of those guys I'd look at me like he's just doing this for the travel money. Like
Right.
this guy sucks. He's here for the wrong reasons. However, being fair, like that's not like the previous board I obviously really despised because a lot of these guys were like very bad people. Like apart from like traveling to matches on people's dimes. But at the same, like I don't like a guy being on the board just for that reason. So I don't know. Could you speak to that stuff?
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's also just not it's not a really great way to conduct effective governance, I think. I've seen discussions saying, oh, we need to make sure that we have a nationals on each coast or at least every other year, so members have a chance to go to attend a members meeting at one of the nationals. And I just to me, if you have to go physically, either go to a major match or nationals to have your voice heard by your area director, that's, I mean, first of all, it's just incredibly inefficient in every possible way. To me, we should be getting feedback in better ways than having to, so for example, trying to go out and do some of this, I did fly to Alabama and shoot their sectional match. And it was a great experience. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed everybody I got to talk to, but for the $1,200 or whatever it's going to end up costing, I was able to talk to 24 people maybe. So the cost per minute of conversation was pretty high. I don't think it was a good, financial investment for the organization, where if somebody wants to send me an email or, have a phone call, that's much more scalable. So to me, I think the focus on board members traveling to matches, the emphasis on, membership meetings as some kind of, come to Jesus town hall where the members get to have their voice heard. We need better ways for the members to have their voices heard than a once a year membership meeting or, their area director coming once a year to their section match.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in my opinion, the previous board, like the Sherwin era, the point of the members meetings was not to provide information to the members. It was to like fulfill a requirement of having a meeting and then do it in such a way as like there's going to be as little actual interaction or information as possible. I mean, it's kind of like when Bruce Wells, your predecessor, would be like, "Hey, just come find me at a match to talk to me." It's like, well, when you're writing that on Facebook and I'm 1,200 miles away from you, it's kind of like you don't want to talk to me. It's kind of how I would read that. So I mean,
yeah. And when you're at a match, you're busy. You got other stuff to be. I mean, if you're running a timer, you're trying to do your thing. You're at a match to some degree to shoot. Should you have to like go across the range to go like bend your area director's ear for 10 minutes? Maybe someone else is talking to him. It's not scalable. I mean, again, everybody's welcome to come up. I'm not saying I'm unapproachable. If you see me in a match, come up, talk to me. I'm glad to have those interactions, but it's, we shouldn't expect that to be kind of our primary method of getting feedback from the membership, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's crazy. And well, how much is the travel going to reduce? Is it reducing? How much is it to begin with? I heard a number. It was a little over 60 grand for last year. Was the board travel? I don't know if that's right. Like, I have no idea. So, if you could give some color on that, that would be interesting.
I don't have those numbers right in front of me. I mean, I definitely think most of the board members are cutting back on travel. I know, so I'd booked that one trip to Alabama back in February. I'm not doing anything more like that this year.
So you felt it was a waste of money, effectively.
I don't think, it wasn't a waste in the sense that I got value out of it, but for the money spent and the time spent and the, amount of resources committed, I don't think it was a good ROI. I'm glad I did it, but I'm not doing it again, if that makes sense.
It does.
I think we have the internet, we have better technologies for accomplishing that same goal. But yeah, but it's the same thing. I don't know the number. 60,000 sounds in the right ballpark for board member travel, which again, when we're talking about a $300,000, $350,000 shortfall, that's substantial. But it's not the whole enchilada.
It's not even a third of it. It's not the enchilada. I don't know. It's an interesting issue though. It's an interesting thing to talk about because people get very emotional about the board member travel. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about the bylaw changes. So there's a bylaw change committee. There are some bylaw changes happening. I'm not asking what the specific changes are, but what I'm curious about is what are they trying to do? What are we trying to do? What's the objective of the bylaw changes?
Primarily to address the ways in which the bylaws are written so that they don't serve the membership or the organization in its current iteration. So, for example, a lot of the bylaws, and some of these were part of the changes in 2021 that were passed as a part of that kind of omnibus change. But things like changing the secrecy around what the board is doing, closing the board meetings to guests, even if they want to attend to observe.
Can you what do you mean secrecy? What's that?
So, I mean, the previous iteration of the bylaws had a guest policy where you could basically ask to attend a board meeting as an observer, and we're holding them on Zoom. So if if your mic is off and your camera's off, you're just listening. We've kind of the live stream has removed the need for a lot of that, but even that. So at every meeting we have to pass a 3/4 majority vote to waive that 10.2 confidentiality bylaw to allow the live stream to happen. So if we got to the point where 3 out of the 9 wanted to say no, then that'd be the end of live streaming. And the last few times it's been a 7-2 vote. So we're right on the cusp. But to me, aside from actual things that need to be handled in executive session, employment matters, ongoing litigation, contracts, financial matters that involve numbers that haven't been reviewed or approved, aside from things that the default should be openness, unless there is a reason for secrecy on a specific topic for a specific defined reason.
Sure. Well, again, from the cheap seats, it's like, what's this like? So let's say in 2021, for example, when there was the omnibus bylaw changes, it was clear to me, it's like, hey, they're doing this to cornhole political opposition, and these guys want to be in control of the organization and whatever. Like that was clearly the objective with the bylaw changes. And there's like all kinds of executive session, and then there's no live streaming. And the point of reading the minutes, it's like this is designed to put out minutes with as little information as possible. That's like what this is designed to do. However, now we've had a big power shift on the board, and it's still like, again, from the cheap seats, it's like they're in executive session for like hours in these meetings. Like should we expect to see less executive session if these bylaws changes happen? Should we expect to see more information? Like you're saying, there might be like a default to a live stream would be the change or something like that. Like what should we expect to see differently?
Well, I mean, so the threshold to get any bylaw changed is you need a 3/4 yes vote. So it's going to be limited by what we can get 7 yes votes on. But yeah, I mean, that's generally the direction we're trying to go in, is more transparency, less secrecy, fixing hiccups, fixing bylaws that fixing bylaws that may have been well intentioned at the time but have bad interactions, right? So there's a bylaw that says you are deemed to have resigned effective immediately if you no longer meet the qualifications of being an area director. Well, at the time, the only qualification that you could change, right, it was like be a life member. Well, that never changes. Be a citizen of the US unless you renounce your citizenship. That doesn't change. The only thing you could change was living in your area. But then they added the RO requirement. And so the interaction between those two bylaws, where if you lose your RO, then this other bylaw triggers. So trying to take out some of those things where that provision may have made sense at the time. I don't think it did, but maybe it was less dangerous at the time. But trying to, look at those issues based on experience, based on the problems, and also look down the road. And, the committee has convened and we've gone top to bottom in the bylaws and flagged, I think, 50 or 60 different things that are areas of concern, things that we'd like to change, big and small, things like the just the amount of time that the agenda has to be put out ahead of the meeting. Right now it's 10 days. If we're meeting every 14 days and we only have 4 days between meetings to put the next agenda together, that kind of thing. So, some of it's small, some of it's big, but we're trying to start small, get the ball rolling. But, the board meeting on Monday was almost 6 hours and we didn't even get to the bylaws change part of it. Now, to your question earlier about should we expect to see less executive session, I would hope so, in the sense that a lot of the executive sessions are around fixing some of these hopefully short-term issues, things like this process of hiring a new managing director, working out some of these sort of more unusual contractual things. So hopefully we'll get a lot of those resolved, get kind of back to business as usual, and the meetings will be more about, rule changes and organizational improvements, and hey, here's our, here's what we're doing to improve membership and that sort of thing. So hopefully we'll get through these kind of one-off crises and be back to kind of business as usual. I don't know how soon, but at some point.
Is there a bylaw about keeping the business, like the business of the corporation? Is that how it's worded? Keeping that in executive session, or keeping that confidential?
Yeah, part of 10.2 says, in addition to things like membership lists and there's a few others in there. It says all financial information of the corporation must be kept confidential. So
but then you release financial statements as well.
Well, yeah, that's one of the things we're discussing is so from a logical perspective, the bylaws cannot supersede the laws of the state. So I believe releasing these financials is actually a requirement of our status as a nonprofit in Washington state. So we, if our bylaws say we can't do something, but the law says we have to do it, then we have to do it. Yeah. So fixing some of those inconsistencies where the, what financial information can be released and when is definitely a part of it. And I'm hoping that going forward, as we have more confidence in the actual records being taken, of things being tracked against the right budget categories going forward, that sort of thing, that we can release more information because we actually have confidence that it's correct.
Yeah. Well, I mean, is there a plan to change that bylaw? Like, it sounds crazy that the financial information is like de facto would be like a close hold information, which makes no sense.
So that was one of the proposed changes to 10.2 that was on the agenda for Monday. I didn't necessarily expect it to pass, and it'll be on the agenda for the next meeting in 2 weeks. I don't necessarily expect it to pass on the first go. I think there'll probably be some pushback, but I think at least the discussion about it will be in open session and informative.
Well, but is that why, like, it's like, boom, we're going to executive session, we got to discuss financial stuff. It's like, that's why is 10.2.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically, right, if there's a dollar number anywhere, it's considered financial information. And straight to executive session, did not pass go.
Okay, so this is some stuff that people can actually watch for. It's like they're like what I'm gathering is you guys aren't exactly sure what happened financially the last few years when you guys weren't there. Okay, that doesn't sound real good, but okay. This bylaw change is something for people to really watch for because that's very specific and articulable, and it's something that annoys people, like for the right reason, right? Oh, we're going to executive session. Like, what is this? Like, we're cutting the live stream because you guys are going to talk about like money. That's like, you talk about that a lot. That's kind of an important thing. So, okay, that's interesting. Um, I've you guys seem hopeful about this managing director. I saw a unanimous vote to extend an offer to a candidate. Will you talk about that a little bit? Like what you expect to see or what you're excited about?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, without going into too many specifics, just because I don't know that everything's, the ink is totally dry on everything, but the candidate that we did vote to extend an offer to has an extensive background in nonprofits outside of USPSA. He's not aware of USPSA until he started interviewing with us, but he went out of his way to drive, I think it was 14 hours to go to Carry Optics Nationals and just like walk around and talk to people because he was so motivated and fired up from the interview process. He was excited about the opportunity and being a part of the organization. From our discussions with him, he has, the background in doing the job. He's not a match director. He's not a shooter, but he is interested in the sport and has when asked about procedural things, how would you deal with this kind of issue or this kind of dilemma in an organizational context, his answers were solid.
Okay. That's interesting. There's no background in USPSA. I would rate that a good thing personally. But that might be an unpopular opinion.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we're even at a headquarters level, the president is the one who's in charge of putting on nationals. The managing director does not really require sport specific information beyond, I think, what can be learned. And I think the fact that we all interviewed, we had candidates from within the sport and we had candidates that came through a recruiter, and the fact that we ended up unanimously voting to extend an offer to someone who came outside the sport through the recruiter, I think indicates that at least as a board, we agree with that assessment.
Well, I mean, the last time the board hired somebody's like match helper crony, it did not work out too good for managing director. I don't expect you to comment on that. That's just an observation from me. Well, Ben, an interesting conversation. I'll be curious to see what the comments and questions are. Because I think right now people are just waiting for information. They're like, what is going on? What's actually happening? So hopefully this does answer some questions. It gives people something like, so you know what you're looking for in the minutes. At least I know what I'll be looking for. You got to see that 10-2 get nuked, baby. Do your best, Ben.
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, if I can say, talking to you on here is a part of a general, not that I don't think most of the board, would agree that coming and talking to someone like you is a good idea, but I think it is incumbent on us as a board to communicate better. So, for example, we had, put together this financial statement to be presented at the members meeting, but then also post it as an announcement, trying to start pushing information out to the membership. Now, was that financial statement not the 2023 financials, but our mid-year update for Carry Optics Nationals, was it as detailed as we wanted it to be? No, but we're trying to move the ball incrementally, and so we're every effort is sort of incrementally trying to improve things one step at a time, and communication is a big part of that. And I think that's individual board members being willing to have conversations based on the 1/9 of the organization that they see, but also as an organization being better at communicating what we're doing and why. The fact that the minutes, you see the minutes and then you also see multiple links with supporting documentation. We're trying to do more of that. So have basically written reports that are detailed on, hey, here's what we changed with the peak stage times and Steel Challenge, having more communication. And so I think it's incumbent on us as directors, not just to do the work, but also to communicate what we're doing. Because doing stuff in private and if nobody knows about it, then nobody appreciates it or benefits from it.
Well, yeah, I mean, like right now, people are in the dark. There's not that much information, and yeah, most board members are not going to take. I mean, I'm not hostile. I'm not being hostile with you, but I'm asking like pretty like pointed questions, like, "Hey, what's up with this? What's up with that? This is what people see," and a lot of people don't like talking about that stuff, as you know.
Yeah.
But I like it to have board members that are willing to talk. Like we have 2 board members now with podcasts. That's a great number. We try to get that number up. Uh, I view that as good, like being more interactive with the public, with USPSA
Yeah.
members, I think is
Yeah.
interesting.
And I mean, I feel it like when I sit down to record an episode, I think it's running through my mind like, okay, what are people going to say? What's the flack I'm going to catch for this? But I just, I think it's the right thing to do. You got to keep going. It's always easier to just kind of keep your head down, go radio silent, and avoid the pushback. But to me, that's part of the job. Just shutting down and being low profile and hard to access is not the way the job should be done. So even though it would be easier to not do stuff like this and stuff like the podcast, I think it's the right thing to do.
Oh, it is. It makes it well. People actually like it, and you saw how people treated the previous board. I mean, we had a situation. How many of these guys resigned in the end? Was it like
At least
Mel,
3.
Rick? Yeah, I mean,
Bruce,
these guys are
Gary,
just like dropping like they just don't like it. They just didn't like the heat.
Yeah, and that was something else I wanted to come back to. And we're talking about the history is even like coming in January and February, there were a number of special elections and interim directors. So the first 6 months of this year, we have had a director changing almost every month. So there's been a lot of turnover just in the 6 months that I've been on the board. So the fact that we're now at a point where the 9 guys that are in the seats are going to be in the seats through the end of the year, and then at most we'll have 2 of those turn over. So 7 of us will be here next year, assuming no resignations or anything like that. There's a little bit of stability even just in that it's been hard to navigate the first few months as there was just so much turnover, not knowing who was responsible for what, new guys coming on, guys leaving all the time, vacant seats, interim directors, et cetera. So that's definitely something that slows progress. That's hopefully resolved for now.
Well, Ben, I appreciate it. It's been informative for me. I think people have a lot more questions. Not stuff that I would expect you to answer on here because of the employment stuff, but I can read between the lines enough. Like I have a pretty good sense now of some things that are happening, and I do hope that you're successful with these bylaw changes, the budget changes, the new managing director. This could be some pivotal changes. It could be very important stuff. So I hope it works out. So I'm actually rooting for you. Believe it or not, I want you to be successful. The previous crew, I just was like rooting for them to just fall on their faces, which they did. So it was nice.
Yeah, I genuinely, I was not expecting 6 months into 2024 for things to have turned around, both in the composition of the board and the staff. I was not expecting things to have progressed that quickly, and so I think wind the clock back. Things could have been a lot worse if.
Ben, I think I was very excited 6 months ago about the prospect of all these changes. I was like, this is great stuff, Ben. I don't think you felt the same way at the time, but
I thought it was going to, take a few more years of flipping 1 or 2 seats at a time until, we would be able to get votes sufficient for some of these changes. But I think things have progressed rather quickly, and so I think it's always worth remembering how things would be different. For example, if some of the previous directors didn't resign and they were still in their seats, or when there was discussion of reappointing some of them as interims, and then that got backpedaled. As bad as things are right now, they could be way worse. And I don't say that to try and buy credit. I mean, we still have a lot of work to do. We still have a lot of improvement to make, but it could be a lot worse.
Well, I mean, it was the pressure from the membership, from the online discussions. like that we're having right now that came in and helped give you guys, give the help you needed. I mean, I think they more helped like guys like Mel just resign, that kind of thing. But that's help nonetheless, and that's generated by these discussions. So I think that's good stuff. All right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to chase anybody out, but I think the more sunshine that comes onto things, the more people see what's actually going on. It lets them make decisions and communicate whether or not they feel like they're being represented accurately. I'm not out to take anyone down or anything like that. I just want the members to feel like they are getting answers to their questions, and I thought you would be a good proxy for those
Such
questions.
a nice guy, Ben. It was so fun butt fucking the last board. It was so fun. So
No
fun to
comment.
deliver on that promise.
No
Oh.
comment.
All right. Well, thank you, Ben, for coming on. I do appreciate it. And listeners should put the questions below. Try to be like halfway respectful, and then maybe Ben will come back on and answer them. Or you probably will answer these types of questions on your podcast. I don't know, but we'll see. I'm hoping more information is coming, and the stuff I'm starting to hear is sounding good. So that's a good thing.
I agree. Yeah, and I would love to come on and do this again.
Yeah. Thank you.